Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about Frozen 2.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And don't forget to review and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Today, we are talking about You Are Enough.
Fixing what our ancestors did.
Our Saints of Show.
And then, of course, we'll give you our contact information so you can go ahead and join the conversation yourself.
So, we're getting down to our summary and review for Frozen 2. I really just want to say Captain Planet in a nutshell. Except you are Captain Planet and the heart at the same time.
Oh, me? I am?
No, everyone is.
Oh.
But Elsa, to be specific.
Well, there's a little bit more to it. Do you want to give a real summary, or is that what you're going to give?
Yeah, I probably should give a real summary. Let's see. Picks up after the events of Frozen 1. Elsa finds out what really happened to her parents, and turns out her grandparents were kind of jerks. In order to save the people that her grandparents were jerks to, she must become the fifth element and save the world from impending doom.
All right. I think I'm going to tidy it up a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So Anna and Elsa are both ruling Arendelle. It seems that Elsa is a little bit more head of state than Anna is. But Elsa keeps hearing this voice and is like, I need to go on an adventure and follow this voice. And she does. And Anna's like, wait a second. If she's going, I'm going to go too. And so she does. And then all of them go on an adventure, and they meet these people called the North Aldrin, and they're like, we've been trapped in this bubble here, and there's like magic spirits, and they're really angry. And then Elsa's like, I'm going to calm everything, and then she does.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That works.
That works.
I really liked Frozen 2. I think it had a lot more adult themes rather than Frozen 1.
Well, I mean, not adult.
Not adult. Well, see, I don't like that term primarily because people misuse it to mean it involves sex. Sex isn't involved here. You can have much more abstract themes and call it adult themes, and instead of, like more, we should be good to the environment things.
Yes. It's themes that adults would pick up on that kids might not necessarily pick up on.
Yes. Much more complex issues.
Yes. There you go.
Okay. They were much more complex.
I am a little silly tonight, so yeah. I apologize about that.
The issues were really much more complex than Frozen 1. I did appreciate that. I didn't think the music kind of matched Frozen 1, because I don't think that Let It Go is going to be Into the Unknown is going to be playing on the radio ad nauseum like Let It Go was. Mm-mm. So, I mean, I guess that's good. It's one of the ones that I would much more prefer to watch Frozen 2 than Frozen 1, even though I think Frozen 1 was a better movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Frozen 2 is definitely worth a rewatch, only to pick up on like the context clues that we didn't pick up on like the first go around, since we did see it in the theaters with our toddler. So there were some times when I honestly had no idea what was going on because he was distracting me. But, I got most of it. I also liked it. It was very enjoyable. I do think that maybe the reason why this movie isn't as, I don't know, groundbreaking, or like people aren't as excited about it, because it's been so long since the first one came out. Mm-hmm. And I think that it just kind of like... The
momentum died.
Yeah, the momentum died a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because they weren't actually planning on making a second one. It was supposed to be like a Tangled, like a one and done type of situation. Mm-hmm. But the people voted, and the people won.
Well, since so many parents bought their children tickets to Frozen on Ice, and our son didn't see Frozen in the theater. We weren't pregnant at the time, so...
No, we were still in New York at the time.
Yeah. Your mom was out to visit us.
Yes, so it was a long time ago. 2013.
Yeah. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
Well, tell me about why I am enough.
Thank you for that transition.
Yeah, no problem. That's what I'm here for. I'm your partner in crime.
Well, let's, to tie into my theme for this season, I kind of titled the start of this, that black magic called love. Only because, we could talk about magic, but I'm not going to talk about the magic of Elsa or the elements of wind, earth, fire.
So you're going to make it kind of like
water.
Harry Potter, where love is like the ultimate magic.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not just love, but self-love. And not in the way that you're assuming that I'm meaning right now. I
am very silly right now. And he saw that smirk on my face and he just like cut me off.
Well, and this is one of the themes that I really thought was one of the more complex ones and one of the ones that I think is most important to point out in Frozen 2 was that you are enough. That Elsa was finding that she didn't need somebody else, that she didn't need that fifth element, that they kept looking for this fifth spirit, this uniting spirit, and it was her the entire time. There's a whole song about it. But that was her journey to find that she was the one that was needed. Mm-hmm. That she was the one that could make that decision to help the people that were needing to be helped, to help the spirits, find their rest, find their peace. And this is something that I think not enough people are kind of realizing about themselves. This is why I think it's worth a rewatch for all of us, because of that theme, which it's really difficult for us to pick up on, especially because we're kind of set into these roles. And speaking of being set into those roles, Anna was kind of seen as being her sister's protector.
Or even sidekick.
Well, sidekick or protector, but I think it stems from like the events of the first movie. I think this was great. The great continuation of a character was that she went through this traumatic event from the first movie. And because of that, she found that the ultimate act of love was to, kind of sacrifice herself for her sister, and her sister sacrificing herself for her. And so she got that role as protector. She's like, okay, no, this is what I got to do now. I can't stop being a protector for my sister, or else I may become a frozen ice statue again.
Do you think it also has to do with the fact that since she doesn't have powers, she feels like this is something that gives her strength? In
a way, yeah. Was that, her sister has powers, but she's the one that, has a better understanding of how to fit into the world with them.
Yeah. Well, then again, Elsa was kind of locked in her room and didn't really talk to people for most of her life.
Yeah. Primarily because of the horrible parenting that was going on. Don't let them know that you feel from the entire first movie, which the dad should have been no, don't do that.
To be fair, I feel like the trolls gave them terrible advice. They listened to them. So, yeah.
Yeah. In both movies, I think that the trolls gave them terrible advice.
It's okay. So, everybody just don't listen to trolls.
Okay.
Okay. That's actually real life.
Real life advice.
Yes.
Don't listen to trolls on the internet, and don't listen to trolls in real life that are rocks also.
Yes.
I think this is also for Kristoff in finding that, I think his own character arc, finding that his love was stronger than his feelings of inadequacy, of feeling she feels like her sister's protector. How am I supposed to fit into this? Mm-hmm. I love her, but
I'm the third wheel to this relationship. Yeah,
exactly. And, even that line, my love isn't weakness, or my love isn't fragile. That's what it is. My love isn't fragile, which I think is, was a brilliant line. And, so it kind of begs the question. All of these characters really display exactly some of those reasons why it's hard to love ourselves. But, it begs that question for us. Why is it so hard for us as human beings to love ourselves?
Well, I think that part of it has to do with the fact that a lot of us were kind of taught that we should be a protector of some kind, like Anna, that we need to make sure that we put other people's needs ahead of our own, especially like if you're in a mother role or if you're in some kind of a leadership role, that we always have to think about the other person. And when we do that, we forget to take care of ourselves, like at the same time.
Well, growing up in an evangelical church, I was taught the acronym for JOY, which was love Jesus, love others, love yourself, which when they harp so highly on pride, you can never have any pride, that you have to empty yourself of yourself, that, it's always God first kind of thing. That last part kind of,
I was about to say that is mixed signals, because in order to love yourself, most people do have a little bit of pride about something that they've done.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of loving yourself, is recognizing the things that you do well and maybe taking a little bit of pride in it. We're not asking you to have a big ego about it, but you can still be filled with pride over something you've done.
Well, and honestly, I feel like this is something that, here it comes again, that millennials have been taught since we were children, is we were taught that we were supposed to fit into these certain roles. And anytime we stepped out of those roles, anytime we stepped outside of those normal cycles or broke the cycles, that, we got despised, we got written about we're killing off, chain restaurants
and
or
diamonds.
what have you. Yeah.
Napkins.
No, we're stepping outside of those norms because, one, we don't have the money to buy diamonds. Two, we found that hole-in-the-wall restaurants are so much better than chain restaurants.
Mm-hmm. And who needs napkins when you can just use paper towels?
Well, we're also killing paper towels, too.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Is that a new thing?
To be more environmentally friendly.
That is true. That is true. And we have done that, too, because we use a lot of, like, plastic bags now and that kind of stuff. Like, reusable plastic bags. So are we part of the problem, Miguel?
Well, and I think it's just because we've been told since we were young that these are the way the cycles should be. And in order to keep those cycles going, they have to perpetuate this myth of being more, of your elders being more expert at something than you are. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot to say for expertise. And I'm not saying that
if you're an
experience
expert
in something.
Yeah. Well, and we can also say that you can be young and still be an expert in something.
Yeah.
It really just depends on how long you've studied, like how much time you've taken to actually like hone your skills and that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But the point is that, this myth that, because somebody's been doing something one way for the entire time doesn't mean that there isn't another way to do it. And there isn't a better way to do it. So it kind of gave us all this kind of imposter syndrome of thinking, just like Olaf thought in the movie, when I'm more mature or when I'm older, then I'll know. Mm-hmm. Then I'll understand these things and I'll understand everything, which is a complete lie.
I know, like everybody in the theater, all the adults were like, uh-huh.
Well, yeah, we posted that meme earlier this week. Like, that's exactly what happened. Like, okay. Well, and what's funny is that us millennials are parents now. We're still struggling with this imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Like this imposter syndrome that we can't be good enough parents, or we can't be good enough adults because that's what we were told our entire lives. We were kids, and
people still see us as kids too. Like if you see articles written about us, half the time they're talking about us like we're still like 18.
Well, because they mean Gen Z rather than millennials.
That's true.
No, millennials are adults. It's like 1980 through 2000 or 1994, something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's when you're old enough to have lived in a world without prevalent internet and technology like we've had now.
Yes.
Which is why I like the newer name for for Gen Z, which is digital natives. I just like that because they haven't not had it. The internet's been around since before they were born, and they're growing up with all of this technology. They know it much better than we do.
I'm still surprised at some of the stuff that Peter manages to do on his tablet.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's hard for us to find that we're enough when we're thinking that we're imposters the entire time. Mm-hmm. When we're thinking that we'll never be good enough. And that's the wonderful thing about this movie is that each of these characters finds that they are good enough. They're good enough just as they are because that's what they're needed as. They're needed as Anna. They're needed as Elsa. They're needed as Kristoff, as Olaf.
As Sven.
As Sven, yes. Among the other reindeer. And see, this is the thing. Imposter syndrome keeps us from doing so much. What does imposter syndrome keep you from doing?
Acknowledging that I actually do have skills.
Yeah.
Like legit. Like I also do cakes on the side, and I made a cake this weekend, and like through my eyes, I looked at it and I'm just like, ugh, I could have done better. But then I post it and like share it with family and friends, and everybody's like, that is amazing. Like that looks so good. Like Kathy, that's like, it's great. And I'm just like, nah. But then what kind of helped me is I like Googled the type of cake that I made, and I looked at other images of cakes that other people have done. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I am better than a lot of these. That sounds terrible. I am better than a lot of these people, but it's the truth.
Well, and it's like I told you, is that there are a lot of baked good people out there, but nobody's going to have the unique talent that you have. Nobody's going to have a Kathy cake because you're never going to have what they have either. Mm-hmm. It's uniquely yours. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for me, was that, I know that I have certain skills. I know that I've done a lot of different things, and I've, kind of thrown my hat into a lot of different rings, and, getting that rejected so many times, it kind of gives you more of that imposter syndrome where I don't really want to try anymore in some places because I don't know how to get other people to understand that I know what I'm talking about. And I think that's just been my entire life. When I think that we've just been saddled with so much of our ancestors' guilt, we've been saddled with so much of this is how it's always been done in tradition, that we can't step outside of that anymore. And this is what I keep trying to tell people, is that millennials have recognized that these cycles are toxic, and we're trying to break the cycles. And that's who we are as a people. And I think that's how we're going to be defined as a generation, is we're defining ourselves as the cycle breakers, as the ones to break the wheel.
Somebody told me that they kind of see us as the person who, like the pitcher who's like throwing the ball, like, and then the next generation is the batter, or like something like that. You know what I mean? Like we're setting them up so they can like
knock it out the park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess not a pitcher, because the whole point of a pitcher is to trick them into not doing that. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying.
The T-ball stand for...
The T-ball stand. We are the T-ball stand for the next generation. Yeah, it works better than being the pitcher. So, yeah. I mean, and we have a lot to think about when it comes to our ancestors, especially people who have a European background. We're not known for our kindness to strangers and people who look different than us. I do think that is in somewhat an inherent thing that humans just have, because we are afraid of the unknown. When we first meet people,
I'm going to go into the unknown.
Yes, but we take things, historically, we have taken things a little bit too far. Mm-hmm. And we see that with Anna and Elsa's grandfather. They had, first of all, let me just say, family secrets like this are not okay. I am so against family secrets. It irks me when I find stuff out like this. Luckily, I don't think that my grandfather has like done anything like terrible, like try to kill a whole people off.
No, he just gave Ronald Reagan a place to stay one night or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst thing that he's done, so it's okay. He also made my Uncle Bob, but that's a different story. Oh, that's bad.
I don't think you can saddle him with just being the progenitor for your Uncle Bob.
Man. Anyway, so we find out that Anna and Elsa have a grandfather who actually betrayed his neighbors as like a, peace offering. He's like, hey, we have this technology. We'll build you guys a dam because this dam is going to be very helpful. But really, he was doing it as a way to betray them because he knew that it was going to cut off their supply to like the magical river or water that they have. I forgot to look that part up. But it has to do with the river. And we actually see this in history too of people who have either given gifts or made promises that actually had evil intentions behind them. Example 1, the Trojan Horse. They're like, hey guys, here's a big horse that's not filled with lots of people. Why don't you bring it inside? And then they did, and it was filled with a bunch of people. Betrayal.
Well, I know. Keep going back to the rise of Christianity in Europe and primarily Rome, the Roman Empire, was Constantine. And that whole ordeal there was they just became too unmanageable for the empire that he was just like, well, okay, we're just going to make it the state empire, the state religion then, so in Christ's name, we're going to conquer.
Mm-hmm. And then also, too, a little bit more close to home, the U.S. government made a lot of promises to the native tribes here. A lot of promises, and they broke every single one.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everyone. And they're still being treated like second-class American citizens. I mean, just now, we're finally bringing attention to the, missing and murdered Indigenous women. And coming from Montana, I knew that kind of stuff was happening all along. Mm-hmm. And I heard people being frustrated about it, or even just whispers of, did you hear that Sarah, disappeared and nobody knows what happened to her? And then that's all I would hear. There would be no follow-up. And that in itself is a form of discrimination, really.
Yeah.
Because they don't take people's concerns seriously. The authorities didn't, And they would make all kinds of excuses up, like, oh, well, it happened on tribal lands, so, they're in jurisdiction, so we can't come in, even if the tribe was like, please come in, we need your help. And they still were just like, nope, we're not going to do that. It's infuriating.
Well, and it's not like the Amish communities. The Amish communities oftentimes will not accept help from the outside because they prefer to police themselves. They prefer to work on their own things. Mm-hmm. And when it is necessary, they do invite the local authorities in to assist with those cases when they do need help.
But here's the thing, and people might get upset. I don't think our listeners will, but the Amish community are primarily white.
Yeah.
The people who live on reservations are part of native tribes, people
of
color. And so
that's what I'm saying is that it's not like that. It's not at all like they have, yes, native communities are different communities, but they're still a part of the society, still American citizens. Yeah. Still part of the surrounding country. Mm-hmm. They have their own ways. Yes. And, each of the tribes has their own kind of rituals and different traditions, but that doesn't make them any more removed from society than you or I, because we have different rituals and traditions than our neighbors do. Mm-hmm. So does that make us different?
Especially if our neighbors are screaming, saying, "We need help! Please pay attention to us! We need your help!" and we're just ignore them.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on another one of my famous tangents. I gotta reel it back in. So needless to say, the USA has a pretty bad history of how they treat people. Obviously we already talked about the native tribes, but also too, slavery was a big thing that we're still seeing repercussions over slavery that happened hundreds of years ago. So, it's still very prevalent today. So you can't just write it off and say, oh, slavery is not a thing anymore when it is still impacting people's lives.
Well, when civil rights era was 60 years ago, it wasn't that long.
Yeah, there's many people alive today who fought for civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then, of course, a lot of people forget about the Japanese and the Japanese internment camps.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to the Chinese, too, which we basically forced them to work in very dangerous conditions, building the railroads that people also forget, which is why Montana has one of the oldest longing Chinese restaurants in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Little did you know, but now you do. But it's also because of things that we're not proud of.
Yeah. Railroads.
And then also, too, there's a history of how we've treated people with mental illness, just throwing people in these massive, like, hospitals, but in horrendous conditions, people shackled to bed, naked, just god-awful, like, obviously treated more like worse than you would treat an animal type of situation.
It's more like trying to forget about them.
Exactly. Yeah. You aren't allowed to be in our society. Like, we don't want you. So we're just going to put you away and pretend you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then also, too, of course, the way that women have been treated in the United States as well. I mean, we still have not passed the ERA. For goodness sakes.
Virginia just became the third state to say, let's do this.
The third recent state.
Yeah.
But now there's a bunch of people who are saying, well, we're past the deadline, so we're not going to pass the ERA. So you have to do this whole rigmarole over again, which is BS.
Yeah.
Like, BS. Sorry, I'm getting on another soapbox. I'm going to come off before I get too riled up.
Sure.
Anyway, so, I forgot to ask you the first question, but we were having a conversation. Let me jump back. So what is something troubling about your ancestors that you want to share?
Well, see, and you thought I was just trying to be funny earlier when I said which ones, because...
Oh, I knew it was funny, but truthful.
Well, and it's true because there's, in fact, the city that you're from, Billings, is named for my seventh cousin, 7 times removed, who was a railroad man who brought the Chinese over to work on the railroads. I have like my long list of colonizers on my mom's side that, there's a lot of horrible things that they're responsible for. In fact, they were mostly all British, and the British Empire is one that was never really kind to other people.
Anyone.
Yeah.
India, for example.
One of the things about British people is that we'll be very unkind to you, but at least we'll sound very proper while doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my dad's side with the Spanish coming over and, being part of the people that, they also, raped and pillaged and took advantage of, those are like my grandmother was native. And so having to deal with a lot of that stuff and the repercussions of that, like just now I'm trying to find out more about my native roots and about, we didn't do very nice things to the Spanish either, but,
to be fair, the Spanish did a lot worse.
Yeah. But like, honestly, they were trying to drive us off our land, trying to take our stuff, trying to take this gold and everything else that we had.
Or lack thereof gold, like thinking that there was gold when there wasn't gold, and they got mad when they didn't get enough gold because...
Yeah. And my Aztec ancestors who, like to play games with severed heads. So,
That's also problematic.
That's problematic.
And let's not forget about the whole, beating hearts out of people as well.
Well, that was a religious ritual. You can't persecute that.
Moving on. There's just certain things that I just have problems with. For my ancestors, I'm European, so a lot of colonizing. As far as I can tell and like done my own research, I don't come from families that have owned slaves because we were really poor and thus we could not afford slaves. So I don't know. I can't say for sure. I mean, whether my ancestors, what they really thought. I mean, I would assume that a lot of them were racist because, I mean, that was the times and in vogue, I guess.
Well, in your Belgian royalty side of it, yeah, they probably did some pretty horrible things as royalty. Well,
that's like many times removed.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I know that there's problems there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Next question, moving right along. What would you like to see in the future to fix our past problems? Or what can we do now to fix our past problems? So future or now, whatever you like to do.
Well, see, I think that the ending for Frozen 2 kind of got fixed before theaters. I think that Arendelle probably would have gotten wiped out had, somebody in the test audiences not said, that's horrible. But I kind of think that, yeah, there are some times when dams aren't supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to have that water up there. You're kind of ruining the ecosystem downriver, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful for the people, the indigenous people who live there. It's not helpful for the environment. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get electric power, but that's, sometimes it's not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, we have, especially nowadays, we have so much better resources for renewable energy that we just don't want to put money into. And there's been a lot of advancements to make cheap electricity too, that, the energy companies will be like, hey, look, we figured out how to make cheap electricity, but are they actually putting it into play?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is part of what I was talking about there. Just because we've done something for so long doesn't mean we need to continue doing that.
Yeah. Gosh, I remember like the oil being the talk of the town when I was in high school. For some reason there was I think we did.
Hey, did you hear about that new thing, oil?
Oh, no, that's not. Yeah, it comes out of the ground and it's black and sticky.
For some reason, Montana got stuck in the 1910s.
No, I think what happened was somebody had done a report about the oil crisis.
Okay.
And then that just kind of like turned everybody's like heads and was like, wait, what? And it was also when there was talk about drilling in Alaska.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that America still struggles with today is energy independence. But yeah, we're not going to get off on that tangent. No. Because that's a long tangent.
That is a very long tangent. Anyway, take care of the earth.
Yes. That was, one of the underlying themes of both Frozen and Frozen 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take care of your neighbors and take care of the earth. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Somebody posted an article about how we need more than just like self-love, to be fulfilled. Like we need like community love as well too. I know that there's been a lot of talk about self-love, which is very relevant, especially for, those of us who suffer from imposter syndrome. But also too, we have to remember that making a community around ourselves, as hard as that is, because it really is hard and scary, is still very important.
Oh, yeah. And I just presented the problems. I didn't present a solution to that. And I think that therapy is helpful for that. It's also finding a community of people who can recognize that you're enough for your situation.
Mm-hmm. Like me, every time I'm like, just bring up my anxiety. And my anxiety is really bad today. And so is my depression. And without skipping a beat, I have at least 7 or 8 other ladies who are just shut up, Kathy. Not shut up, don't tell us about your mental illness. It's more, shut up, stop talking bad about yourself. Don't talk bad about my friend.
Okay.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to our Saints of Show. We do have one from a listener here that we'll toss in at after ours. But yeah, so if you do have something, we do usually post that. I'm going to try to do that on Wednesdays, is try to post something asking you to get us a your Saint of Show by Friday before we record so that you can, we can throw them in the show.
Sounds like a plan.
For mine, I'm going to go with Anna. I think primarily because she was broken the hardest of that role. She was broken of what she thought she needed to be after her traumatic event and realized that, she was enough. She was the one that needed to fix things here in that situation. Mm-hmm. Realizing, this is what happened. Okay, I need to make this better. Even though, for all she knew, Elsa died and then Olaf died. And so she needed to go on.
And she doesn't know where Kristoff is.
Yeah.
He's just wandering the woods.
Talking to reindeer, doing what he does.
Singing into himself.
Yeah. Having a nice 80s montage.
Yep. Sorry, now that song's in my head. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. My Saint of Show is Olaf. Because he's very relatable. The whole, I'm going to know, life is confusing right now. I don't know what's going on, but I know I'll know better when I'm older. I will know when I'm older. It's okay. And I'm sure that there's people who are 60, 70, 80 who are still I'll know better when I'm older. I think that kind of thinking doesn't really go away as much as people like to say that it does. Because there's certain circumstances where you just don't know until you're in it, Yeah. Or you just don't know until somebody tells you about it. So it's okay, Olaf. I get you. Life's scary.
And our last one is from Ashley. She's a listener and a friend of ours, and she put Kristoff. Her reasons being that Kristoff was that, primarily for that line, "My love isn't fragile," was that, he didn't take it as an insult, really, when the sisters were kind of off on their adventure, and he was like, what do I do?
I'm just lost here in the woods.
Yeah, the third wheel. And so he's like, okay. And the whole singing the song. So
yeah,
which that's I would agree that kind of grants him a little bit of sainthood there, but I still feel like Anna was the Saint of Show for me.
Well, everybody can have their own Saint of Show, Miguel.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Ashley didn't persuade you?
No.
Okay.
So, let us know who your Saint of Show for Frozen 2 is and the reasons why. You can also let us know what your thoughts are on how pop culture has influenced our ideas on romance and love. That's what we're going to be talking about next week. Mm-hmm. So,
not a particular show. All the shows that involve romance and love.
Yes. Although I may be stuck talking about How I Met Your Mother for a long part of the time.
It's okay. I'll keep you going.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So let them know how they can get a hold of us.
Oh, yes. So we can be reached at Facebook and Instagram at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. And then we also have a website, www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Yes.
I did it.
So, you can also reach us at our email address, patronsaintsofpopculture@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to review and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. And with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.